Did you know that some of America's most famous families, the names you see on buildings at Harvard and Yale, built their fortunes on the back of a massive illegal drug trade? It's a dark chapter of history that has been systematically scrubbed from the textbooks, but today we're pulling back the curtain. We're talking about the opium fortunes. Between the early 1800s and the 1860s, a handful of elite American families masterminded an industrial scale smuggling operation, shipping tons of opium into China. This wasn't a small time side hustle. This was their primary business, boasting profit margins of 400 to 500%. It was a trade that would addict millions and destabilize a nation, all while building some of the greatest dynasties in American history. Let's start with a name you definitely know, Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, came from immense wealth. But where did that wealth come from? A significant portion of it originated with his maternal grandfather, Warren Delano II. Warren Delano wasn't just a successful merchant. He was a key partner in Russell and Company, the largest and most powerful American firm trafficking opium in China. From 1833 to 1846, he was knee-deep in the trade. He didn't just make one fortune from it, he made two. After losing his first one in a financial panic, he returned to China, doubled down on the opium business, and rebuilt an even larger fortune. This inherited wealth funded FDR's privileged upbringing, his Groton and Harvard education, and ultimately his entry into politics. The irony is staggering. The same man who would later sign some of America's strictest drug control laws as president owed his entire career path to the profits of the drug trade, and the Roosevelts weren't alone. How about John Jacob Astor? We often hear about his fur trading empire, but that's only part of the story. Astor was one of the first American businessmen to jump into the opium game, amassing a fortune of around $20 million by the time of his death. In today's money, that's equivalent to well over $500 million. He wasn't just dabbling, he was a pioneer of the American opium trade. Then there's the Forbes family. Ever heard of Forbes magazine, the Bible of wealth and capitalism? Its origins are directly tied to opium. John Murray Forbes and his cousin Robert Bennett Forbes were central figures in Russell and Company. They managed the fast clipper ships that outran Chinese authorities, delivering chests of opium to a network of smugglers along the coast. The money they made from this enterprise didn't just enrich their family, it laid the financial groundwork for ventures that would eventually lead to the creation of the magazine that to this day chronicles the world's richest people. The influence of this dirty money seeped into the very foundations of America's most prestigious institutions. Let's talk about Yale University and its infamous secret society, Skull and Bones. One of its co-founders was a man named William Huntington Russell. His cousin, Samuel Russell, the founder of the opium empire, Russell and Company. The society was established in 1832, precisely when the family's opium profits were skyrocketing. It wasn't just a coincidence. The seed money for one of America's most powerful secret clubs came directly from the proceeds of the drug trade. And it wasn't just Yale. The hallowed halls of Harvard, Columbia, and Princeton were built and endowed with opium money. The Perkins family, the Cabot family, the Lowe family, all prominent names in the opium trade, became major philanthropists. They donated vast sums to these universities, building libraries, funding professorships, and shaping the future of American intellectual life. Their names are literally carved into the stone of these institutions, a permanent and sanitized legacy that completely erases the source of their wealth. So, how big was this operation? By the 1830s, American firms controlled about 10% of the entire China opium trade. While the British were the dominant players, American merchants carved out a very profitable niche. They developed a sophisticated smuggling infrastructure. They used the fastest ships of the day, the clipper ships, to transport the drug from places like Turkey and India. They established floating warehouses, old ships anchored offshore, just outside Chinese jurisdiction, where the opium could be stored. From there, it was transferred to smaller, faster Chinese boats manned by local middlemen who would then distribute it inland. The human cost of this enterprise was catastrophic. It's estimated that by the mid-19th century, between 10 and 12 million Chinese people were addicted to opium. That's roughly 10% of the entire adult male population at the time. This wasn't just a public health crisis, it was a societal collapse. The trade drained China of its silver reserves, fueled widespread corruption, and hollowed out entire communities. It directly led to the Opium Wars, where Britain and to a lesser extent America used military force to keep the drug trade flowing against the will of the Chinese government. Perhaps the most shocking part of this story is the hypocrisy and the systematic historical whitewashing that followed. Once these families had secured their fortunes, they began to carefully erase their connections to the opium trade. Family biographies were rewritten, business records were lost, and a new narrative was crafted, one of daring Yankee traders and respectable merchant princes. And then, in a stunning reversal, these same families and their descendants became leaders in the American anti-drug movement. They supported and championed policies like the Hague Opium Convention of 1912 and the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914, which formed the basis of modern American drug prohibition. The very people whose ancestors got rich pushing drugs on another nation now position themselves as moral crusaders fighting to make those same substances illegal back home. It was the ultimate act of laundering not just their money, but their entire public image. This hidden history matters. It challenges the clean, heroic narrative of American capitalism and reveals a much more complicated and often brutal story about how wealth and power were truly accumulated. The fortunes built on opium didn't just disappear, they compounded over generations, solidifying the status of an American aristocracy whose influence continues to this day. It's a sobering reminder that behind many of the great names and institutions we revere, there can be a history that is far from respectable. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this dive into hidden history as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more stories that challenge what you think you know.